हर पल कैसे कटेगा पल हर पल दिल 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 में मची है मची.
Good evening, Flo. I've been to a bunch of Flo events before, but I think... So when Divya invited me for this, I thought, well, this is a very strange combination. I hope I don't make a khichdi of it. Putting a historian with one of the greatest actresses in the country on stage together is an unusual combination, certainly. But even if I make a khichdi of it, I'm very happy already, because the first thing Vidya said to me when we met was that you look too young to be a historian. And just before coming for the event, I was getting ready and I noticed these grays in my beard and I was like, should we tweeze it out? I'm meeting Vidya Balan. Is it unkempt? You know, do I look bad? But I'm happy. So now let's see whether you're happy at the end of this event. Vidya, wonderful to see you. Thank you for being here. I'll begin with a simple question. How are you today?
I'm very well, Manu. Hi everyone. It feels wonderful to be here in a room full of fantastic, dynamic, beautiful women. So thank you, Divya, Abhishek, and thank you, Vicky, Flo, Chennai, for having invited me. And, you know, I have to say that I was taken aback both by the fact that your chairperson is so young, and then I meet a historian who looks too young to be one. But yeah, I look forward to this conversation. I've never chatted with a historian before. The closest I've come is, you know, chatting with William Dalrymple. So let's see how this goes.
You know, the reason I asked you how you were, and since you mentioned history and being on stage with a historian, we are going to go into some of your own history. Because I remember when I was doing my homework for this session, and this was really fun homework because I watched the latest Bhool Bhulaiya, you know, edition that came out. So it was good homework to do. But I was reading up some of these older interviews you'd done, you know, these articles that had been written on you. And the reason I asked how are you was because I was also thinking, how are you now, almost 20 years into your career, right?
Yes.
It's been 2 decades now. And I remember reading during my research how getting that career started was really not at all a pleasant experience for you. You lost 12 movies in
Yes.
Kerala because they thought you were a jinx.
Kerala and Tamil Nadu.
Yeah, so, I mean, looking back now, obviously, at that time, did you ever think that, you know, this is just not worth it, all of that, and then sitting now 20 years later, are you okay? Like, do you think?
Yeah, you know, I actually complete 20 years in film in June, but it doesn't feel like I've been around that long. I just feel as excited about acting, and thank God for that, as I did early on. I didn't know how things would pan out. Yes, it was a period of struggle, but you know, when people ask me, how did you go through it? Honestly, I didn't think I had a choice. I had no plan B, so I had to make it work. My parents had given me the permission. I'm a Tambram girl, and in our family, nothing mattered more than your academics, your education, your degree. So, you know, the fact that they were allowing me to explore this meant that I needed to make this work. So despite all the obstacles, I think I just kept going. And honestly, I've never wanted to do anything else in life. I bought time by doing an MA in sociology, you know, after I graduated out of Xavier's. But yeah, of course there were times when, I think it was a period of 3 years when nothing seemed to be working out. I was replaced, like you said, in about 12 films, both in Kerala and in Tamil Nadu. And it was a very heartbreaking time because I felt like, oh my God, maybe this is not meant for me. But I think the hunger in me was so, what is the word for it? It was a raging hunger, you know, so it couldn't be, even my tears couldn't put it out. So I would go to sleep crying a lot. I remember that my pillow would be wet for months on end when I'd go to bed. But then the next morning I'd wake up and feel, okay, let's give it another shot. You know, I think I'm shameless somewhere. And maybe that's worked in my favor. I just didn't give up. Yeah, like I said,
You know, Bollywood's gain, sociology's loss, I guess. But, you know, looking back now, at the end of, 20 years now down this line, is that hunger still there? Is it the same kind of rage? Is it the same kind of enthusiasm?
Absolutely. But now I think it's not about proving anything to anyone anymore, because that I've done. Now I think there's hunger to explore different kinds of characters and genres and to continue. I love what I do, Manu. I feel blessed and humbled that I do this for a living. Because how often does one get to do that, So I love it. But now I think there's a slight, I think I'm in no hurry to get anywhere, let's put it like that. When I was starting out, I think I felt like I was on a treadmill, I needed to keep going. Now I've gotten off the treadmill because at some point, it's just, I think you just after the success, the love, the appreciation that comes your way, and after having spent so much time with the maturity that comes with experience, I think you feel like you can take your time to feed that hunger, Now I don't eat every 2 hours, I only eat when I'm hungry.
Back in the day, there used to be this distinction, right, between the actor who acted in art films, the 80s and 70s, and then the star. In many ways, in today's world, that's sort of broken. I don't think you can make such binaries or define it that way. When you set out, did you set out with a hunger for acting? Like, was that a form of self-expression that this is what I want to do? Definitely not sociology. Or was it really the idea of, so many people come to Bombay with stars in their eyes, literally, metaphorically, and they want to become stars actively. Not necessarily great actors, but they want to be great stars. Did you have a clear sense of, do I want to be one of those people who makes a sort of strong impression as an actor? Or was the stardom something that attracted you?
I think, again, I've wanted it both, equally. I've been as much a fan of Shabana Azmi as I have been of Sridevi, and they're two ends of the spectrum. And I felt like, why can't someone be both? I don't think I thought that actively then, very honestly. It's in retrospect that I feel that, okay, that's what drove me. I just felt like, this is what I want to do. I don't know whether it came from a desire for self-expression or for validation, because, but it was, I definitely think, I used to be a painfully shy person. Therefore, I think I always felt more comfortable putting myself in someone else's shoes, being someone else. I tend to get bored also very easily. So I think I'd get bored if I was just with myself. By being an actor, I get to be other people. And I think it was this, I don't think it was one or the other that drove me. I wanted to be an actor, and I wanted all that came with it. It's not like I wanted to be an actor, at home. I could have been doing, skits at home or in school. I wasn't happy with that. I wanted more, clearly.
Okay, going back a little bit into the history, since you mentioned you were painfully shy, what kind of as a child, do you still participate in school stuff and skits and things like that? Because there are some people who have noticed as kids, they're already divas in a sense, because they love being out in front of people, love performing and all of that. But then one also reads about actors who are the opposite, which you were perhaps describing. For example, I believe Jayalalitha was a bit like that, which is, when the camera was not in front of her, she'd be reading a book, very quiet, very shy in a corner. And then the camera switches on and she completely transforms herself into somebody else. Are you of the latter category, do you think?
No, I think, also, this is an all women's group, so I can comfortably say this. Of course, besides you, Manu.
Alas.
No, but I think puberty changed something in me. I was painfully shy, and then when puberty hit, I just began to feel like it was almost like that caterpillar wanting to become the butterfly. So slowly I started gaining confidence in my interactions with people. I became comfortable performing in front of people. And I think I was already in love with Madhuri Dixit and Ek Do Teen, and I would perform in front of the mirror. Now I was okay performing in front of people also. And, you know, I think over the years also, I think this happened more with, I've always been comfortable performing. Let's put it like that. I think from that time onwards, and the comfort has only gotten more and more, as in it's become stronger. I think, you know, when the camera comes on, I feel most comfortable. It's almost like the camera is my most trusted confidant. But I think with becoming an actor in film, I think there was another, almost like an alter ego that developed. There is a personality that surfaces when I step out as Vidya Balan, the actor. And there is, a lot of people tell me that there's not much of a difference between who I am off screen and on screen, but I know that there is. You know, I know that that painfully shy person still exists. But I let another aspect of my personality. I think it's about just finding your way through the world. It's probably a survival mechanism. But I enjoy being this person when I'm out, you know. And when I'm at home, I think I just enjoy being Vidya.
Do you have siblings?
Yes, I do. An older sister. She's 4 years older.
And what does she do?
She's been an advertising professional all her life. She's mother to two beautiful kids, twins, who are my lifelines, Ira and Ruhan. But she's, just 2 years ago, she quit her job, and now she's figuring what to do. She wanted a break, pretty much like Rohit Sharma, I think.
You referred to your parents letting you explore acting, although with the condition that you should get your education out of the way first.
Yeah.
Was that uphill in a sense at all? Like when you first said that this is something I even want to try, you mentioned the whole Tambram background, right? Most people don't even think of that as an option. When you first mentioned it, was there a set of family people who said absolutely not, that's preposterous, what you're even talking about?
I think, you know, it's basically a nuclear family, but I remember my mother telling me that if my father was alive, he would have had none of this. So I said, thank God, God bless his soul. Sorry, but... And my father is a very gentle-mannered man. So he actually told her, he said, we'll cross the bridge when we come to it. So don't worry about it unnecessarily, because yeah, she's saying she wants to be an actor, but who knows? Who knows what is to happen? You know, and I have to say that it was actually, I began to do, I got a television show, which was before Hum Panch. That show didn't see the light of day. And then we were all called to Balaji Telefilms, Ekta Kapoor's office, to audition for a daily soap, and when I was auditioning for that, I got offered Hum Panch as a replacement for another actor who was already on the show. So things were just, you know, I think that desire was so deep. I feel like this is my purpose in life, you know. So I think it had, I don't know, it just, the universe made things happen for me. My mother was very skeptical, I cannot deny it. She was like, you know, this world is full of sharks, and especially it's the big bad world of films and all that. But I have to tell you, when I got I was in Chennai for an ad film shoot, and I got asked whether I'd audition for a Mohanlal film in Malayalam. And I called my mother, knowing fully well that she's a big Mohanlal fan. So I said, you know, they're asking me if I should audition for this. I'm not sure. What do you think? She said, no, do it. So thank God it was a film opposite Mohanlal. And I actually then made the audition. I got the film, but that film stopped midway, right? But I think it was, jokes apart, it was when we meant to meet the director that something changed for my mom. It was my parents, my sister and me that went to meet the director, Kamal sir, in Bombay. And they met him and they said, they came out, they said, he looks educated. They were shocked that someone from films could look educated. And then my mother, of course, said, Taravadu. In Malayalam, Taravadu is like from a,
A good family.
Good family. So he looks like he comes from a good family. So I think that changed something for them. They felt like, oh, even our kind of people could be in film. And then when, of course, my mom accompanied me to the shoot, and she saw that it was a very professional environment and there weren't any sharks, and I wasn't, I was like treated normally. And more importantly, she realized that I could hold my own. I think so slowly her confidence grew, but obviously initially there was a lot of trepidation. There was like, oh my God, our daughter's going into this business. But I think post that period, Manu, when my first film got shelved, after shooting for it for a bit, I was signed on to do many other films over a period of 3 years. And interestingly, either they got shelved or I got replaced in them. There was some sort of story doing the rounds that, oh, this girl is Jinx. So I just feel that by that time, my parents now had begun to hope that something works out for me, because they could see how hurt or how disappointed or how damaging that period was. Though in retrospect, I feel that thank God that happened, because things worked out after that. But at that point, I think their hearts were broken for me. So they had begun to pray. I remember my father saying, I just want to see her in one film on the big screen, and then I ask nothing more of you. And my mother was also praying, Then of course my first film was a Bengali film. So one thing led to the other, but I think slowly she came around to realize that this world will be what you make of it.
On that note, you mentioned sharks, right? It can't be the case that you never encountered sharks. And I'm also curious because this is a room full of women, many of them in business. And in all of these fields, we still live in a world where, in many ways, it's designed for men often. So when women make it, break out and become successes, often there's double the resistance that a man in the same position would face. And in your field, where there's already, at least back in the day, there are all these cliches, there's sexism, there's of course preying on new people who are coming in and all of that, casting couch, all of those things. You obviously must have encountered sharks. And now, 20 years later, do you come face to face with some of these sharks who are now like, madam?
I want to tell you that I've encountered sharks outside the film industry, not just in the film industry. I think there are sharks everywhere, I would say that I've been very lucky because I've not really had anyone proposition me in the film industry. There was one awkward experience that I had where I was doing a film, and then I was visiting Chennai for an ad film. This was one of those 12 films that didn't work out for me. And when the director knew I was coming to Chennai, he said, can I come and see you? He came to the hotel to meet me and kept insisting that we go back to my room to discuss the film. So I went back to the room finally because he was really persuading me, but I left the door open. And he realized that I don't know to date if he meant anything.
I think we can safely say he meant
but
something bad.
I think I was never scared to walk away from any opportunity if it made me uncomfortable, only because this was not the means to my survival. I came from a very stable, secure, middle-class background where my father was a breadwinner, where we were, happy in our life. So it wasn't like I was alone in the city, I'd run away from home, I had to make it work, or there were other considerations, So I think because of that, if I've smelt a rat, I've run in the opposite direction, and that's how I've kept myself safe. But the point I was trying to make is there are sharks everywhere, and I haven't. Of course, there are. I also learned to laugh, to be a bit, to laugh loudly, because that's I think a bit scary for men. And yeah, really. And a woman with a voice is the scariest, I believe. And to also be a bit, what is the word? A bit, I'm not getting the word for it, but I'm not coy around men. I'll say things that can shock them, that can scare them. You know, and I realize this is part of the Vidya Balan personality that I've developed over time. Because today when I look back, at some point a few years ago, I looked back and I said, oh, you know, this is I wasn't aware, but I guess I've carefully cultivated this person to keep myself safe. And I think all of us would agree that we do that, right? Outside of our comfort zones, we do that. We do that sometimes, you know, with our neighbors, with our friends, with our colleagues out in the world. When we put ourselves out there with our extended families, with all kinds of, even within families sometimes.
You know, you were looking for the word in English, but I got a word in Malayalam where I was thinking that, you know, there's the word pavam, right? If you're a very pavam little girl, then,
Yeah.
you know, people would not see you as a threat.
Yeah.
But the moment you laugh, the moment you have a point to make, and the moment you're not afraid of your own voice, is when people are like, hold on, what kind of a
Yes,
woman is
exactly.
this? And you've obviously sensed that as well.
Yeah. I don't think, again, maybe I didn't carefully cultivate it. I unconsciously cultivated it. It's a defense mechanism, and I think I know lots of women who are either like that or they, you know, we all have different ways of dealing with it.
I mean, even the pavamness sometimes can be a defense. It can be a way to protect yourself.
Like you behave like you don't understand anything. And I'll say something to you before you can say something to me. So then people are like, okay then.
Have you ever been accused of throwing tantrums? And I ask this for the context because a friend of mine used to be a film star in Karnataka. And when she started, much like you, came from a solid background, wasn't dependent on it. So apparently in those days, in the early 2000s, when they went out for a shoot, sometimes in rural areas, they're dancing on a hill or something, and they had to change their costumes. There'd never be a caravan, there wouldn't be a place. They'd have to go to some random house. Somebody would hold up saris or whatever there to make sure nobody was spying, and they'd have to change there. So this girl said, no, I need a van. I need some place to change properly. And they said, you're throwing a tantrum. Nobody's ever, you know, demanded these things in the Kannada film industry. Have you ever been accused of throwing tantrums?
No, I think I was too worried about being liked to ever throw a tantrum or to ask for what I wanted. You know, in the initial years, because I became a film actor when I was 26, at pretty much the age when a lot of women used to, you know, be packing their bags and so, you know, settling down, so to speak. So I think I was just I had gotten this opportunity and I wanted everyone to like me and I wanted to be really accommodating. And I didn't want anyone to believe that I was tough to work with. So I don't think I ever asked for what I want. So over the years, I have, you know, I've learned to use my voice. I discovered my voice over time. And it is, I think it's the most fantastic gift that being an actor has given me. Finding my own voice. But having said that, more power to your friend who did that. I think we must all ask for what we want, unapologetically, shamelessly, fearlessly. I've learned to do that over time. It didn't come to me naturally then. And then I think that also became part of my personality. And now, honestly, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but I don't need to ask for anything. I'm at a stage where, you know, before I ask for something, things get done. So I still don't have to ask for anything.
You know, it struck me just now when you said that if it was a man saying it, they would say, I don't need to ask for anything. But you sort of caveated it with, I don't mean to sound arrogant. And that's again that pressure society places on women, right? Like women always have to double guess, always have to sort of look behind their back to make sure that they're not misunderstood.
But I have to say, even when a man says that, I'm like, calm your...
You can finish the sentence.
Should I say it? But there's a camera here.
No, I believe this is not going up anywhere. So, no, it's not going up anywhere.
No, I'm like, calm your tits, dude.
Okay. You said that you were 26 when you started. Now, obviously, ageism is very real. And it's not just real in India, it's real everywhere. especially in the entertainment industry, especially where so much depends on looks, the way you're aging and all of that. Men, obviously, it doesn't affect that much. We're in Tamil Nadu, where you can be, I suppose, close to 80 and still, act with people young enough to be your grandchildren. And that's fine. I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing. But the same thing is never extended to women.
It's not a bad thing, it's a very bad thing. What the hell?
I was being diplomatic. But the same thing is obviously never extended to women. So you came into this industry quite late. I remember when the Dirty Picture came out. I was still in my early 20s, I think, at that time. And I remember a lot of people were amazed. They were in awe of what you did and all of that. But in those days, there used to be these things in papers called blinds, these gossipy pieces. And I don't remember where it was, but I remember reading in one of these like tabloidy papers, I guess, oh, she's like an amma, why is she doing these sexy roles or whatever? You've obviously faced criticism based on both age and body issues, right? Did that ever sort of put you down, or did you always learn to just...
No, my age has never bothered me. I have to be very honest. Like when I asked Divya, I said, how old are you, if I may ask? And she said 31. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm 33. And then I realized, no, I'm 46. So, no, but jokes apart, I think my age has never bothered me. I've always been very honest about my age because I'm very proud to have lived to this age. And I'm hoping that, at 80 and 85, I'll be saying the same thing because it is a privilege. I heard someone say it's a privilege to grow old, and it is. The lines, the white strands, they're all very, very well earned. So, and that's not just a cool quote, but I feel that today we are seeing women who are, what would happen in the past invariably is a woman's life would get over by the time she was 40, she'd be a grandmother. She had invariably fulfilled all her responsibilities and now she was like in retirement mode. But now that has changed, right? We are all stepping out. We're all leading the lives we want to, and not necessarily in jobs or professions. I'm saying you can be a homemaker and yet you can be in charge of your life. You're not just living vicariously through your children, you're living a wholesome life, or at least trying to. You're at least trying to break the shackles that are binding you. So I think that's changing, and therefore around us we see more and more women. I see Malaika Arora Khan. And my God, it's, of course, we focus more on her appearance because she's so gorgeous. But look at how she's going from strength to strength unapologetically. Firstly, she looks the way she does. Secondly, she's also, she's an entrepreneur. She's just started a restaurant. I think all these are incredible things. And she's living exactly the life that she wants to be living personally. So I feel that is definitely changing. And that age has never bothered me because I feel that I'm sexier now than I was when I was. And I think that's what it is about, owning your body, about enjoying your body, and body is a very important part of a woman's life because we've been seen as our bodies for as long as humanity has existed. So I think to be in charge of your body itself is to be in charge of your life. It's a first big step towards that. So I feel that, which is why we tend to also focus so much more on appearance. But I think it's just, what is it? I can feel 33 because I'm speaking to her, because I forget I'm 46. But just yesterday I was telling a friend, I've just turned 46 and I feel 46 and I'm absolutely okay with that. Yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's how you're leading your life, what are the choices you're making, how you're trying to fulfill all your dreams, even if that means you fulfill all your responsibilities and then do it for yourself, but do something for yourself, right? I think that's what it's about, isn't it?
But criticism on these silly things, like, oh, there's an extra pound on the face or whatever. We've seen that with Aishwarya Rai. I remember, when she went to the Cannes Festival at some point, there were these nasty, nasty Twitter comments that were going out saying, she just had a baby. And people were going crazy saying that, oh, how can she appear in public looking like that? Now, Obviously, 20 years later, you've seen it, you've been there, you've done that, so obviously the perspective is different. But in the early phases when people put you down not because of what you do or how you do it, but because of something as silly as, oh, she's not the perfect weight or whatever, does that psychologically sort of pull you down?
See, I grew up a fat girl. So, you know, I've always been, there must be lots of Tamilians, you know, yo, moonji etra azhaga irukku. Konjam weight kammiyachuna innamum azhaga irpai. You get what I say. You know, for all those who don't understand Tamil, people would tell me, you got such a pretty face. If you lose a little weight, you look even prettier. I've been called gunde, I've been called all sorts of things. And I think which is why also I was in a shell. And then slowly I found the performer in me when I was, like I said, when I hit puberty, and that was extremely liberating. I was like, beauty is as beauty does, and performance was just letting me, and we didn't have too many opportunities in school, but the few that we had, you know, I grabbed them and I made the most of them, and I realized that that's what I want to be known for. It's not just at that time I didn't know I would be an actor, but I'm saying it's for what you do, not just for how you look. And it's been a very troubled journey with my body, but today I can safely say, and not just because I'm sitting in front of you a few kgs lighter than I was last year because everyone is talking about my visible transformation. It is not just because of that, but over the years I have realized that it is this that's keeping me alive, and I'm only rejecting and abusing it. And at some point it's going to pack up and say, okay, then tata bye bye, and then be, you know, I won't even be around to reject it. So I think I developed value for my body over the years. It's been a very tough journey towards here, but I think I've been working with a healer for the past 14 years, and that has really helped. Doing the dirty picture was a game changer for me because I looked my biggest I had up till then on screen. And everyone was saying, oh my God, you're looking so sexy and you've completely owned it and all that. And I realized that, yeah, it's the same thing. It's not about how you look, it's about what you do with that body, honey.
Makes sense, makes sense. Okay.
He's embarrassed.
No, no. Not at all, actually. I have a friend who wrote a book called Desperately Seeking Shah Rukh, which is actually about a bunch of these things. She tracks the lives of ordinary women. Someone's a stewardess in this thing, someone else works in sales, whatever. And the whole book is about how women navigate this world and covers a lot of these things. So
no, but
yeah,
you know,
familiar.
I guess also we've always looked at ourselves through the eyes of men. So we wanted to fit into their idea of desirability, of what is desirable. Now I think we are struggling. So we'll pull each other down a lot of times because the struggle is real, and we felt rejected and but we're slowly trying to break those molds also and say, okay, this is who I am. You know, when I see stuff about body positivity and all, it's great, but I consciously now use the word fat, because fat without judgment, it's just a description. But when you say fat, it's wrong. I also say thin.
You know, I have an 87-year-old grandmother, and she's a pretty large lady, and she is so proud of it. Because, you know, the secret is, she says that nobody thinks she looks 87. She looks like she's in her 60s. And she says it's because I have fat, because the wrinkles don't show, and she's extremely attached to her fat. To the extent that, you know, one day I saw her sitting next to the window, and she's looking at her hands. And I was like, why are you looking so sad? And she says, look at all these wrinkles. I just want to kill myself. And I was like, you're 87 years old. It's fine to have a few wrinkles. But she's just owned her body and like worn it with such pride all these years.
She's a role model, guys. Really.
I'll tell her you said that.
Yes, please.
Okay, but small pivot now since we'll run out of time otherwise. Coming to marriage. Now, you've been married a series of years. There used to be, again, being the historian, I have to keep constantly comparing with what things used to be, right? So back in the day, marriage meant the end of a woman's career. That was it. You couldn't be an actress anymore. You couldn't do sexy roles anymore. At most, maybe 10, 12 years after marriage, you'll come into a maternal role and start playing senior roles, as it were. I mean, we have cases where younger actresses have played mothers to much older men as well. In Kerala recently, Kaviyur Ponnamma passed away, and from the age of 15, she's been playing the role of ammas because apparently she looked maternal. Did marriage bring about some kind of change in your career? Do you think people perceived you differently after marriage and started looking at you a different way in terms of the roles they offered and all of that?
No.
Did that ever happen?
No, I don't think so at all. That's because, again, like I decided that I'm not going to let my weight stand in the way of me realizing my dream of being an actor or living my dream of being an actor. Similarly, I said nothing, no stage of life is going to stand in the way. If at all, it's going to open up. This was I remember, because when I got married, I remember I had two very senior people from the industry tell me, you're at your peak, why are you getting married? Because it'll be the end of your career. And that was concerning. I was like, and then, coincidentally, after my marriage, the first release after my marriage didn't work. I had my first flop in many years after my marriage, so I began to feel insecure. So I was like, oh my God, have I made the wrong decision? Should I have not gotten married? Is my desirability? And then I realized, but I'm not forever going to be seen as desirable, and I don't even think in my case that I'm known for my desirability. I've been known to be someone who plays various characters. For example, Silk was one of them. That's not my currency. So I said, as long as I know my acting chops, as long as I'm willing to work hard, I think, again, that took a couple of years because I had a series of flops in a row. It was just about timing, I think, because your worst fears also come true. When the first film flopped, I think I felt, oh my God, is this the end of my career? Obviously, it was not, because I continued to get work, but those films continued to flop, and I was like gripped by this, fear that, oh my God, what does it mean for me? What kind of roles am I going to get offered? But I have to tell you that throughout my career, and I say this with a great amount of gratitude, that I've continued to get offers of films with very interesting characters, substantial characters, pivotal characters, around which the film story was woven. So I think actually nothing changed. And I really think it's quite a misnomer, because people feel that once a woman gets married, her desirability goes down. It's actually, in most of our cases, it's only after we get married that we become our true sexual selves. We begin to explore our bodies, our sexualities more than ever before. So I think it's actually the best time to give a woman a sexy role. She knows more than she ever did. I'm saying in most cases. Now, of course, you don't even have to be married, but which is great. But I belong to another generation, so.
Well, since age is, you're open about your age, yes, I suppose that makes sense, that you come from a different perspective. I was hearing you on a podcast with Raj Shamani, and you guys were talking about marriage and your husband and all of that as well. Your husband is also from the film industry, right? Does it ever feel like you're taking work home constantly? Does that happen?
No, because we don't work together. The first film of mine that flopped after marriage was not just a flop for me. It was a film he had produced. So it was like, oh my God, kiske kandhe pe sar rakh ke roye. It was a tough time, and that's when we realized that we're not going to work together ever again. Because, when one is going through a low, the other should be saying, okay, come. Whatever, I'll support you. But here, that wasn't the case. So I think I think we're very happy about the fact that we share what's happened in the day. We share whatever is happening at work. But it's not a combined stress that we're going through. Also because, let's face it, we're all leading stressful lives, and our business is very public. So everything gets magnified, so we can do without that.
And on the same podcast, you were also talking about how you didn't think you'd ever get married. What changed?
Siddharth. I think I realized, for the first time, he was my first long relationship. And I just felt like, okay, I felt like I was, as cliched as this may sound, I felt like I was home. And we were together 2.5 years, and our families were saying, why don't you consider getting married? And I was like, for me also marriage equal domestication. So I was like, I don't want to get married and all that. But with him, I felt like that's not going to happen. It seemed like a natural progression because we wanted to live together. And I said, okay, so what is it? It's just it's a legal thing. Let's just do it and see what happens. What's the worst? Thankfully, there's been no need to think of that.
I don't mean to pry, but again, going back to your Tambram roots, right?
But you are prying.
I am. I'm getting to it. About to. Yeah. But going back to your Tambram roots, was there ever any pressure saying, oh, you must now have children and you must be a mother, all of that? Has that ever played on your mind?
Yeah, my sister's kids are like my kids. And my mother would say, but they are not your kids. And one day she actually turned around and said, you'll never be able to go to a PTA meeting. And I said, what makes you think I want to go to a PTA meeting? For God's sake. Ask all those who are parents. They'd rather not go. Mothers can really say anything, I've realized. And I can say that comfortably because I'm not a mother. So I can't ever be accused of that. No, but I feel both Siddharth and me weren't ready for children until a certain point, and then we actually accepted the truth that neither of us wanted children. And I think this was a big revelation because I thought maybe he wants children, he thought maybe I want children. Neither of us does, and we respect that. And my mother was like, no, but when you grow older,
Even Vidya Balan gets that question.
Of course.
When you get older.
No, and my mother, I'm telling you, she told me, when you're older, your sister will have her family, Siddharth's brothers will have their families. What about the two of you? So I said, we'll have staff. What else do you say? No, and then when COVID happened, and a lot of people were going through tough times and their children couldn't come, I said, even if I had a child now, that child wouldn't be able to come to me. I think she gave up after a certain point, but most importantly, I respect the fact that, I value the fact that we were able to be honest with each other, and thankfully we were on the same page. Someone asked me, isn't that selfish? I said, if it is, it is. It's selfish in your book. It's not selfish in mine. It's being honest and authentic in mine. And we are happy. If something changes and one of us wants a child, anyway, we're too old for that. But, then we'll see what happens. But as of now, that's where it stands.
I can almost...
And I remember my father's sister said, God bless you. I hope next year when I see you, you're... I said, no, I put on weight all my life. I can't put on any more weight. So she said, no, I said, no, I also know what you meant. But we've decided not to have children. And I have to say to her credit, very respectfully, she says, if that's what you want, God bless you. I think and she's 80 plus. So kudos to her for having said something like that.
That's amazing. Because I was in my head picturing some kind of uncle in your extended family saying, Bollywood has changed Vidya. She doesn't want any of these things anymore. Which then got me thinking, as you got busier, as success happened, as you became a public personality, this happens to anybody who's successful in any field, right? As the stakes get higher, as you become more responsible, you get busier, the demands on your time increase, and then there are people from a certain past who expect that they can continue the same kind of relationship with you, which you can't entertain in the same way because you're just a different person, you're also evolving. Have you ever faced that kind of criticism where people come at you saying that, oh, she's changed so much, she's become too arrogant, she's become this, she's become that?
No, I haven't, but I have to say that some of my relationships did change and some fell by the wayside. And that's the natural process of growing and evolving. I think whether or not I was an actor, of course, because I'm an actor, it's a little more pronounced. But you know, I've often heard people say that after she became an actor, or after he became an actor, after he became famous, he changed. I think actually it's the lens through which we see people that changes. It's not so much, I'm sure they change, but maybe we are not ready to keep up with that change, or maybe we are holding on to an antiquated version of who we expect that person to be, and we're constantly judging them. So, you know, I was just telling someone who came to meet me earlier today that I have two friends. Both are not in the country. We speak once a month. So if I have to hang out with someone in Mumbai, it doesn't happen. But I'm very happy being by myself, and then my life revolves around my husband and my family. So and my work. Like, this is only when I'm not working that I have the time, right? But I'm very happy. I think, and I think a lot of women over 40, I've heard them say this, that relationships that don't, a lot of times you give to relationships that don't necessarily serve you, and we're not just talking man-woman, you know, then you just learn to walk away from it, knowing that that station has passed.
The event, I noticed that on the poster they said Vidya Balan redefining stardom. And I was curious, A, how do you define stardom, you personally? And at this 20-year milestone, you've got another several decades ahead of you, right? So you're literally in the middle of your career now. There's this past, and then there's an exciting future. Things have changed. There's OTT, technology is changing. New faces are coming in. All of this is happening. Has your idea of stardom been constant? Has it changed? How do you define the term, and you know, where do you stand on this whole idea of stardom?
I think, you know, I don't know, I've never been asked that question in 20 years. It's quite interesting. How do I define stardom? I don't know. I think I just enjoy the love that I receive. And I'm using the word love very lightly, of course. I think it's the acknowledgement, the recognition, the applause. I love all of that, and I'm very grateful for all of that. And I love the fact that I get lots of privileges, and you know, I get to travel the world, meet all kinds of people. It's a very, it is a very privileged life that I lead, and I'm very conscious of that.
Do people still ask you to like audition? Does that happen even now?
No, that hasn't happened. See, in India it doesn't work like that. I believe it works like that in Hollywood, but it doesn't work like that in India. So post Parinita, I've not had to audition for anything. But maybe, you know, if I open myself to opportunities abroad, I'll have to do that. And I have to say that now I'm open to it. A few years ago, if you had asked me, maybe I would have been like, you know, I'm too comfortable here, I don't want. But now there is hunger to do something new. So who knows, I might just take up the next audition that comes my way. But I think stardom is just, it defines a large part of me, but it doesn't define all of me.
And then on a connected note, what is growth for you now? Because you've achieved, from an objective person sitting on the outside, you're there, right? Like you're already there. What is growth further?
There's so much more to achieve. There are so many more women to play on screen. You know, I haven't even played 650 women yet. Not even 65. So I have a long way to go, and just, you know, I'd love to be able to tell all kinds of stories in different parts of the world. And I think I'm enjoying being myself more and more and more with every passing year. And I'm loving that process that's leading to it. That's it. I don't plan. I'm not someone who ever strategized my career or my life. I don't know. As of now, I don't even know what my next film is going to be. I'm in the process of deciding. But I just let life take me along. You know, I go with the flow. So let's see.
Completely random, naughty question. Have you ever found at any point in your career being surrounded by astrologers saying do this and then do that and, you know, wear this ring?
I thought when he said naughty, Asaro, finally.
You're talking to a historian, you see.
I grant you that. Astrologers, yeah. You know, I remember when I was going through this very tough phase, right? Those 3 years, my mother took me to an astrologer, much against my will. And he said, bathe in Gaumutra. I was so angry with him. He said, if you bathe in Gaumutra, then your career will
get cleaned
be
up.
Protected. Guess what? I bathed in Gaumutra and I got thrown out of a film. So, moral of the story is urine therapy of any kind doesn't work. No, I'm joking. I believe it does in some cases, but yeah, I'm not one. I definitely am beginning to, with age, see, appreciate astrology as a science, but I don't like predictions and I don't want to know. Let life surprise me, na? Because otherwise, fear is a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know. So if something is said to you, then you're only looking in a certain direction or you're chasing a certain fear, and it's very limiting.
And I'm glad we got the Gaumutra story out, because years from now, when somebody writes a biography of Vidya Balan, I'll offer them notes saying, did you know, in that year, Vidya Balan bathed in Gaumutra. You can add that to her biography. We've got to go to audience questions, but I was told that we must have a rapid fire, which I've never done in my life. Luckily, Divya sort of crowdsourced some questions for me, and I'm going to just go in. Let's see how rapid it turns out to be. Simple questions, nothing naughty. First one, marriage or singledom?
Marriage now. It's been 12 years, what else can I say? No, genuinely now I'd say marriage. There are many, but Sridevi is my all-time favorite.
An actor you'd never want to work with again. You have to be honest. You've been honest all conversations, so now you really have to. You can switch off the camera if you want.
No, I'm just thinking, I've worked with such nice people.
Right.
An actor I never want to work with again.
Okay, let's do it this way.
Maybe someone who's just done a crazy song. I'll leave it at that. Think what you have to.
Very mysterious. We're going to have to Google this at the end of the conversation. Your cheat meal, if you have such a thing.
Oh, pasta and a dark chocolate dessert.
Oh, you're a chocolate person. Wonderful. I approve.
For the past 1 year, thanks to Amura, I think.
Okay, best thing about your spouse?
He's a very non-judgmental person. I admire that about him. Not just with me, but generally with people. He's very accepting of people as they are.
Worst thing about your spouse? Is it a list?
He wears chappals at home. As a South Indian, you know, you don't wear your slippers or your shoes into the house. But he's Punjabi Jew. And they do. And I'm a poet and I didn't know it, never mind. But he just, so that's a constant battle between us. I'm like, you know, he wears different pair of slippers at home now, but that's taken me a few years.
Marriage is not easy.
Yeah.
Now this one's, you better answer this with the right answer, huh? Bombay or Chennai? You can't be politically correct. You just have to say.
No, I'm not going to be. See, Mumbai is where I was born and brought up. So Mumbai, but today it's Chennai.
On a connected note, Hindi or Tamil?
I have to say that I'm more fluent in Hindi. I've been more exposed to Hindi. I like it when I hear someone speak Tamil well. But also you have to know that I'm a Palakkad Iyer. So our Tamil is anyway
Malayalicized.
Talayalam. You know, it's neither Malayalam nor Tamil. But I love our dialect of Tamil also. But I love it when, you know, when I hear Tamil being spoken in Chennai, I feel like it's almost like honey dripping. You know, it's such a beautiful language.
I can tell you Vidya's done her homework before this session, huh?
I've come to Chennai now.
Okay, and the most important and the last question of the rapid fire, your favorite moderator at an event?
Got to be a historian.
On that note,
Manu
thank you.
Pillai, guys. But genuinely. Genuinely.
Thank you.
That thing about stardom foxed me. In 20 years, I've never been asked that question. So kudos to you. And yeah, I hope the next time we meet, there's more of a history for you to have gone through.
Well, the next time we meet, I'm going to ask you if you've read my book that I presented you.
Yes, thank you. I
we
will
see.
for sure read it. I'm reading again after many, many years now. So I really look forward to that.
Perfect. Thank you.
The first question is, you mentioned that our worst fears also come true. Is there a big dream that you're trying to manifest?
I think, no, there's no big dream as such, but I'd like to believe that I'm a positive person, so I only think well of myself and everything involving me. So I think that gets manifested also. It would, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But there's no big dream as such.
Which strong, independent women do you look up for inspiration while playing your strong roles on screen?
Not one, honestly. There are so many strong, independent women around us. My mother, my sister, so many of my aunts, my neighbors, my teachers, women I've come across in life, even on the local train in Mumbai. You know, there are so many, 650 of them here, so not one woman ever.
How do you pick your priorities for each phase of your life?
I think I focus on what I'm doing at any given point of time. So if I'm at work, I'm fully involved in that. When I'm at home, I'm a home bird. And see, I do realize that because I'm not a mother, it's easy for me to focus completely at work when I'm at work. That's not a luxury that mothers can afford, but it's easier for me. So I can't multitask. And again, you know, I just want to tell you women an interesting conversation that I had with someone recently about multitasking. And they said actually multitasking is the most subtle form of pressure that society has put on women. By saying, oh, we multitask. Actually, who said we multitask? It's something that we are expected to do all the time. Expected to be professionals, expected to be mothers and wives and daughters and friends and homemakers. It's just too much. I'd say stop the multitasking.
You seem to become every character that you play. But do these characters leave a mark on you?
Oh, for sure. I think a little bit. Every character leaves you with some, I think, life lesson. You know, whether or not you realize it then, you realize it over time. I also feel that I choose films according to my current state of mind. Like at this point, I'm only looking to do a comedy, you know. And, but I know that every character or every film experience gives you something. Sometimes it's tangible, sometimes you can articulate it, sometimes you can't. Like The Dirty Picture liberated me bodily.
Can I ask a quick add-on to that? On The Dirty Picture, ultimately it's a sad story. It ends very sadly, right? Do you take back some of the character's trauma when you're in the middle of the shoot? Do you feel weighed down by that person's story and the tragedy that you know it was? Does that happen?
Yes, that did happen with The Dirty Picture because it was a very intense experience and I was not comfortable with her committing suicide because I felt, even though it was a semi-biopic, I just felt that, you know, that shouldn't be what people take away. But thankfully, my director was absolutely convinced that that's how he wanted to tell the story, so we went ahead with that. But, you know, it did make me quite sick. That was the time that I started my healing. Because I remember I had physical reactions every time I read the scene. I used to get claustrophobic. If I went into a small lift, I would feel like I couldn't breathe and all those things, which is when the healing started. But I think it is tough. But also with The Dirty Picture, I realized that that's the role I'm playing. And that is that character's journey. That's not my story. You have to create that distance to be able to keep your sanity.
Okay, the last question. I know it is controversial, but how do you feel about being replaced in MS Subbulakshmi's biofilm?
Oh, I didn't know I was...
Oops.
No, as a matter of fact, I was supposed to do this film 7 years ago, and it ran into a legal tangle, so the film never happened. So it was only last year that Anu Parthasarthi, the famed costume designer, and I got together and paid a photographic tribute to MS Amma on her 108th birthday. But I don't think there's any... People have approached me with the film, and I said, if you get permission, the requisite permissions, then I will consider the film. So I'm not aware that such a film is happening. Forget that I've been replaced.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.